Hello and welcome back, and welcome to today's solution session. As you will know if you were with us yesterday, these are our deep dives into a particular topic, and today we're tackling digital fan engagement for the return of sport with our friends from Greenfly. Now, just over my left shoulder, right as you look, should find James Emmett, my colleague. James.
Yes, hi. We're really playing with the depth perception here in the studio.
Certainly are.
Yes, we are. With me, over my left shoulder, just over here, we've got Jean-Baptise Alliot from UEFA and Daniel Kirschner from Greenfly. Daniel, where are you? Because it looks incredibly beautiful and sunny behind you.
I am in Santa Monica, California. So
of course you are.
Sunny and beautiful is the
Yeah,
that's
the standard. That's the norm. Thank you both very much for joining us today, gents. How this is going to run, you two are going to talk fan engagement together for about 20-25 minutes. Then we'll come back into the studio and we will take some questions from the audience. That brings me on to a good point. In the audience, please do feel free to fire in your questions using the Q&A function as we go. But Daniel and Jean-Baptiste, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. It's great to see you. JB, it's fun that we can connect from so far apart. I know you're in Switzerland and I'm over here in California. Sort of to kick things off, I thought it'd be great just to sort of start from the top here based on the current situation and talk about, how has UEFA continued to deliver digital value and content and experience and engagement to its members during this time?
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Good to be there with you. Thanks, Daniel, for first question. So here, nothing new. I mean, just like any kind of sports organizations and any big corporation as well, we've been mainly using our different assets that we have. We don't have live sports event, but we do have a lot of archives. The way you can do it is easily use the archives, and actually on UEFA TV, so on our OTT platform, we've put back some top games from different Euros in the past, so national team matches, and also like Champions League or Europa League matches. So this is how we've mainly done it. Also having some engagement with former ambassadors during the matches. So popping in on UEFA TV. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We've done also some activations with our sponsors. So on the women's game with Visa, for instance, we have Together We Play Strong. And so during the lockdown, we partner with Visa in terms of reaching out to female players in terms of providing advices or some trainings for people that were staying at home. So that's how we've been doing for the last 8 to 10 weeks, more or less.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I know that it's interesting to see like certain strategies emerge. Like obviously the archives, strategy activating and really also connecting and engaging with different ambassadors. That's something that we've seen a lot. Of course, when it comes to our platform, how to engage with people in their homes and stuff like that, and be able to connect with them and get content out from them to connect to the audience and the community.
The digital and marketing team were very proactive in delivering these kind of assets that we have. I mean, obviously, when you don't have live matches, then you do with what you have, and we're quite good and efficient in using those quite rapidly, actually.
Yeah, no, it's been very compelling to see that. And how, I mean, is that, I guess that, that kind of content's been a big strategy for how you've dealt with the postponement and delays. I mean, what other ways have you adapted to kind of the reshuffling of the schedule as you guys look at both Champions League and the European Championships? Yeah,
so on that one, I mean, for us, I mean, I cannot disclose any information on that. We are obviously working on like every league's on a return to play project. Obviously, the DFL example last weekend was amazing from our end. We've definitely adapted to the new situation. We're working with our sponsors, with the broadcasters, but the main thing is really we want health safety, health security. So for when we will come back. So we want to have this first before even thinking to something else. But obviously, as part of the discussions, you need to think on the current right activation. What are the modifications, and if you have certain right that you cannot activate anymore because we have new guidelines, new health safety measures that we have to enforce, then it's how you can compensate or activate new rights.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. When you mentioned the DFL, and it, clearly we're entering into this period, this sort of interim period before sport can come back in full, where people are playing matches, with empty stadiums or without fans. So as you sort of think about that period and how to continue to engage fans and keep them really connected to the game in the way that they would be if they were able to attend in person, what kind of innovations have you seen that can, you think, help leagues, federations, clubs to really continue to connect and engage with their fans during this time? And I think, to put that in some context, I think one thing that we're seeing a lot of is sort of an acceleration of existing trends. So what do you see as being really helpful during this interim period, and then how do you see those innovations really playing out coming out of this period as we return to full stadiums?
Yeah, okay, so quite a lot of questions there. To take it first in terms of innovations, the thing is, the return to play, like, we know that behind closed door matches will be the new reality for quite some times, because we believe it's important to go back step by step. So in-stadium fans are not going to be the reality for the next coming weeks and months, for what I can think of. So in terms of innovations, obviously thinking outside of my mind like that, as part of, for instance, the UEFA Startup Challenge that we put last year, we onboarded WSC Sports, which is actually an amazing tool for us, like automated highlight clips, to help us once the matches will be back on, to actually help us in terms of activating that towards different audiences, but also for our sponsors or broadcasters to be able to use them. But as we're looking as well forward in terms of the next year delivery, as you know, the Euro 2020 has been postponed by a year. And here, through our new open innovation scheme, where Greenfly is currently discussing with us, I mean, as a partner, like, we're also thinking of you in terms of using Greenfly to actually reach out to different audiences, to maximize the sponsorship activation using players, ambassadors, influencers. So definitely, I mean, to be honest with you, in sports, in the sports tech ecosystem, you have very good solutions that are there. Yeah. You have a lot. You just need to find the right one for your organization. But once things will get back and that we will have the live matches again, I mean, there are plenty of solutions, at least to at first engage digitally. And so here, WSC is a perfect one. Greenfly is another one that we plan to use. So that's how I would see it. And for your second question, in terms of activation and the change, I mean, for me, rather than talking about a change per se, I think it's more an acceleration or some kind of an evolving landscape. So people were already looking at ways to engage more digitally to a certain extent. I mean, prior to COVID-19, everybody was already engaging and trying things. I think that the new reality is that we will experience an acceleration and some kind of a identification, operationalization, which is a bit faster, even from the sports organization, in terms of trying new things and making this how you cope with the new reality, I would say. But we also see, like, if I have 2 seconds, is we also see with COVID-19 the need for what I call phygital. So we also see the need for physical experience. So this is how you can best activate your digital tools, solutions, and try to put it with your physical engagement once you will be able to go back to the stadium, obviously. But the phygital aspect is very important. But clearly you will see a boost in terms of digital engagement and activities.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, man. One thing, you bring up, WSC. I mean, one thing to think about too, when you think about these innovations, is how they fit together and how they complement each other. I mean, WSC actually is a partner of ours. One of the things that's really interesting is when you think about the ability to generate, WSC has this incredible ability to generate a lot of compelling content by automating highlight clips and stuff like that. And then the question becomes, okay, what do you do with that content? How do you connect that with an audience in a really meaningful way? And so, using obviously something like Greenfly that can, connect directly into WC and then distribute that content out to the athletes to share on their social channels, out to the teams to share in real time, and really make sure that all that content's going to its most compelling source, connecting most deeply, with the most engaged fans. It's really interesting to think about how these different pieces fit together. Every organization now has like a tech stack, and it's not like, okay, I'm going to pick this solution for this and this solution for this, but it's really thinking about how do they complement each other, and what is the overall vision that you're trying to execute.
Yeah, and it's also, frankly speaking, it's also a way for us. I mean, as part of the Innovation Hub, when we are sourcing for startups out there, I mean, we have our own metrics and we have our own strategic priorities, but at the end of the day, we also need to understand what is our own environment, what is our own reality in terms of assets we have, but also the tech integration, like the infrastructure and the processing. And so here, if you spend some time also working with WC and you have an integration with Greenfly, then it's for the best. I mean, it's working well for any kind of sports organization. And here I'm not just talking about UEFA, but I guess any clubs or any leagues, or once the infrastructure is in place and that the integration is there, I think it makes sense. After, you need also to make sure in terms of rights delivery what you can do and what you cannot do and how you can activate. But for me, it definitely makes sense to ease the process and to have these kind of like merging capacities, which is even better in terms of engagement, even for influencers or for different sponsors. You can really increase the opportunities which are out there in terms of maximizing the reach, and not just for podcast or sponsors, but anyway.
I mean, it's interesting. The Innovation Hub obviously, really speaks to, how forward-thinking UEFA has been in terms of not just, sitting back and waiting for, technologies to come to it, but really going out there, looking at what's out there, really thinking, very creatively and thoughtfully, about what are new ways that, to engage fans. I think the stuff that you guys have done there and the fact that you had that Innovation Hub has put you in a position where now you have a tool set that you can use to respond to like this rapidly changing environment in a really different way.
I think what you said is quite, I mean, thank you first. I mean, thank you. For us, I mean, the idea is more than purely digital or purely technology. The innovation is really about your mindset and how you try to future-proof yourself. So how you remain agile. And so, okay, you can talk to me about virtual reality, augmented reality, and all these new tools or these new solutions which are there. But at the end of the day, what you want is to drive value. And what you want is a tangible output for your strategy. So the Innovation Hub is simply a vehicle to make sure the UEFA strategy is delivered and that we future-proof ourselves. And so technologies like WC or Greenfly that we were mentioning are just like fitting in the overall equation, because we have this kind of driving value, tangible outputs which are directly there. And it also allows us also to see and to kind of look at the future trends and try to anticipate them better. But also we are not in a reactive position. We're a bit more into like forward thinking. And so that's the whole goal of the UEFA Innovation Hub. I mean, we are working with the outside world in terms of external value creation, but we're also working internally with the Innovation Lab with internal value creation. And here we can incubate ideas at UEFA, but we can also definitely look at relevant partners like Greenfly in terms of how we can drive value and opportunities, as well as just not for UEFA, but obviously for sponsors, for the fans, for ambassadors, for the influencers, for different communities actually. So that's our raison d'être actually.
That's a really good point. I think it's important, the way that you describe it. It's not about having a digital strategy or a social strategy. It's really about the holistic strategy of the organization, and really, thinking about all these pieces fit together and support the different pieces. And I think one of the things about having an innovation hub and having that kind of function is also the ability to really socialize these things throughout the organization. So they're not just, okay, this is what the social team is doing, this is what the digital team is doing, the people over here, on the broadcast side or on the event side. I mean, everything's kind of separated. It's really about how they work together, how they support each other, and how they help you achieve this overall holistic vision for the organization and to really maximize the engagement.
That's exactly it. Honestly, that's exactly it. But in full honesty as well with you, I mean, I'm standing here today in front of you, but at the end of the day, I'm working closely with all of the business units. So here, I mean, a big shout to all the digital team. I mean, Craig Hepburn, Kevin Ashby. I mean, all the social media guys, all the communications team. I mean, we're working hand in hand. So at the end of the day, I'm not doing the Innovation Hub is not working in isolation. We're working closely, and actually that's part of the success. You need to make sure you understand the needs and the strategic priorities for the different divisions, and especially the one of marketing, as we're talking today around digital engagement. And actually, we're working hand in hand with 4 or 5 different business units internally every day to make sure we maximize actually the opportunities, because I think that for most of us and working as rights holders of sports organizations, we get pitched every day. I mean, I get maybe 50 or 60 deck, and we have an open innovation platform that we review, and we get a lot of requests. But at the end of the day, you don't need 1,000. You just need 4 or 5 that allows you to actually perform where you want to perform. And for this, you need to work hand in hand with the real business experts. And so since the beginning, actually, we've put together like these kind of bridges between the Innovation Hub and the business side to make sure that we work hand in hand. I mean, innovation is 99% process. It's just providing people with a framework to actually enable this kind of new tech to enter. And so here we're just identifying, but also putting the framework to make sure the business guys, I mean, the guys running the business every day, they can actually engage and try to find and refine the product for our needs. So that's what we are doing actually.
Yeah, no, I think that's really wonderful, and it's great to be able to collaborate. I wanted to circle back on one thing that you said a little bit earlier about the sort of acceleration of existing trends. I think one thing that's really interesting, I mean, we're talking a lot about, okay, what do we do when there are no games? And then what do we do when there are no fans in the stadiums? And it's really about sustaining interest. And when you think about it, most of the time a game is not, or a match is not going on. Most of the time a fan is not in the stadium. Mm-hmm. So what I think, this has sort of forced a very kind of creative, thoughtful process about how to, in this complete vacuum, how to continue to engage and build momentum and build interest. Mm-hmm. But I think all those kinds of strategies that we're building, like being able to, use a platform like Greenfly to engage athletes in their homes, or be able to, collaborate remotely in richer ways. Like, I think it will be great to see those tools applied to a world where there are, first matches without fans and then matches with fans, because those same tools that are used to kind of sustain and build engagement when nothing is going on can be used to sustain and build engagement, between seasons, between matches, like, at all times. So I think it's thinking about that as an acceleration, it makes sense. Like, these are a tool set that already was being constructed in ways that fans are already starting to engage in between events already, and then taking that and kind of extrapolating out and really focusing on it. I think it's really helpful.
For me, it clearly relates also, like, talking a bit more about the VC world. It's like investors are usually talking about habits, and clearly COVID-19 is about this change of habits and to which extent the new reality will have changed people. So it's too soon before I can say anything about it, or that anybody can say, okay, it has changed drastically and people have new habits or wants to engage differently. But what I would think, at least 5 or 10% of some core fans or some people that were engaging with sports or football in certain way will have their habits to be drastically different. It's like what you see in other business sectors. Even using your phone for Uber Eats or whatever. So some people were never doing it before, or even like being on Zoom. So you can see like some people were not even used to it. Now it's becoming part of their normal life, I would say. So I'm not saying that once we'll go back to normal, and I hate this because I don't think there will be a new normal. It will be a different normal, but it will be a new reality only. But I think these habits will be kind of interesting to measure in terms of what we'll keep and what we'll get away from. But I'm sure that 5-10%, or I don't know, depending on the VCs, you can even go to 20% for some of them. They make this claim. in terms of how people would have changed their habits. And this is where also it's interesting in this period to look at behavior science to a certain extent in terms of why people are engaging, but not just what, but the why behind, the real reason.
Yeah.
And this is what can really help you really future-proof yourself again, right? Really understanding these changes in habits, what people are looking for, and also the merging of different worlds at the same time, along with sports. That's what's on the horizon for my side.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you, and kind of that new normal, framework is interesting. I mean, I think obviously people are itching to go back to the kinds of experiences that they were in, but at the same time, I think we are seeing this kind of almost like a compression or as you said, acceleration. I mean, you talk about like comfort with Zoom or comfort with video conferencing, like that, was growing and becoming more and more ubiquitous. And, but now it's like everybody, every age, from my, kids who are doing Zoom classes to, to people on the other end of the age spectrum who are using it for the first time to connect with family members or things like that. So, I think it's almost like we've leapt forward 5 years, if you look at e-commerce versus retail, kind of the same thing. It's almost like we're leaping forward, and it's hard to imagine that many ways will go back. And when you think about this kind of digital fan engagement, like obviously we were already in a world of Instagram stories and TikTok and all these, different, really direct, connect, intimate, authentic ways of engaging. But now that's all we have, we're, the usage, the adoption, the engagement, like everything's accelerated. So it's almost like we're 5 years in the future.
It's evolving really and accelerating. So we had different plans to put in place. And we definitely see this new reality as the one that we were anticipating or that we wanted to prepare for. So it's just an acceleration. And it's funny that you mentioned TikTok, but even for TikTok, the way I've seen it is like, even now when you look at it, or it might be only my own perspective, but I see way more older people also embracing it.
Yeah,
it's complete. I mean, look at it 5 months or even 6 months ago, and it was very young, very specific usage. Now, when you look at it, it becomes even more corporate or traditional, or even like 30 plus, 35 plus, even 40 plus.
Yeah.
And I guess as well, Greenfly using it for some like engagement. You can, I'm sure, it's not just about football players, but you can see also different influencers or even the music industry, how they are, or the fashion industry, how they have embraced it, and how they are creating new storytellers around that. And for me, the changes a bit in TikTok and what you see today on TikTok is kind of a reflection in terms of acceleration, in terms of now new audiences or new use cases of different people and different target groups, which were not part of TikTok before, but now are engaging into it, actually.
I think what's very interesting about TikTok too is it's not just another channel with the same kind of content, but it's got its own kind of culture and content. And you see that kind of culture, as you said, growing to different age groups, growing to different, more traditional segments, but still retaining some of that personality and some of that kind of mode of interaction. And I think is really interesting. And
that's key. That's key for any kind of rights holders or sports organizations or even for brands. I mean, the way you interact or the way you enter in this kind of platform, like you need to have your own identity. You need to remain true to your own brand. So that's I think part of what TikTok is trying to do is to make sure you also drive value for your own organization once you're there. So, but it's funny to see the engagement and the difference. I mean, I'm not going to talk about my grandma using Zoom while she's 70 plus, but I mean, for TikTok, I was really, I saw the shift, and that was quite interesting to look at it, and definitely a word of acceleration for now, I think.
I think it's a good point. And also when you talk about the kind of content and the interest, I mean, we think a lot about with our platform and stuff as a way of really balancing the authenticity of original content creation by the community or the voice of whoever's sharing the content or using the content with the objectives of an organization like UEFA or a football club or whatever it is, which has its own objectives. So it needs to still have some kind of capacity to sort of advance those, but it doesn't want to completely override the authenticity that makes people so excited to engage with their athletes or with their fan base or, with their fan clubs or whatever it is.
This is why I actually this is why Greenfly, I like it. That's why I like it. I mean, UGC is we are all talking about it, but the thing is that authenticity will be key in the coming weeks, in the coming months, in the coming years. authenticity is a key word now. And I think that UGC and making sure like you can allow your fans to actually engage. I mean, people are no longer passive. Definitely with the new norm is like it will reinforce that, like people wants to be part of it. People wants to be part of the actions. Fans wants to be their own creator of their content. And so here there is a massive opportunities for sports organizations, for rights holders to actually activate and give the floor to also the fans to make sure they can embrace and they can like create their own content with your brands and actually engage with the different influences that you have. So I think that will be definitely part of the new reality. And that's why I like the value of Greenfly, because you are using this kind of UGC content and you can deliver it to different audiences. That's the way we are looking forward for the future. Yeah. As easy as this.
Yeah.
Daniel, Jean-Baptise, it's a fascinating conversation. We've been listening in intently here in London, and I know many people watching around the world as well. And we've got a few questions coming in that we'd like to throw at you both, if that's all right. Anthony Scammell from H&K has asked this question. He says, innovation usually needs to fail first before it succeeds. Can you share some failures with us that may or may not have led to future successes?
It's a cracker of a question.
Good question.
What a question.
What's the answer?
Do you want to go, Daniel? Or
yeah, maybe if we go with Daniel first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, I think it's a really good question. I mean, there's a great metaphor that I like from sports, which is that, if you see somebody fielding a baseball, it looks like a very fluid motion. But apparently when you break it down frame by frame, it's actually very jerky. It's a bunch of recalibrations. And so, when you look at any kind of company, you look at Greenfly, like you can tell a story that's like, oh, everything led us on this, perfect path. But really it's a bunch of recalibrations, a bunch of responses. I mean, to talk, kind of about us, like we really started out with this idea about building a community of experts around sport, and then building a tech layer so that people could interact with those experts. So you'd have, athletes and team doctors and things like that, and then media companies could come and like send requests for content or send content, and we would sort of own this community of people. And we actually delivered that originally around March Madness in the United States, where we built a whole big community of like, celebrity fans of college basketball teams and things like that. And it went very well, but immediately following it, first of all, it was a real pain in the neck to run around hustling and like rounding up all these celebrities, rounding up all these retired athletes and stuff like that. And then the first question we got from our partners who used it is, hey, we love the tech. Can we use it for our communities of people? Can we use it for our people? And we had this kind of moment where me and my co-founder, we looked at each other and we thought, okay, this is a different business than we'd envisioned. It's completely different. But, it's like, wait a minute, and one of our first partners actually was working with LeBron. So it was like, okay, wait a minute, they're going to pay us and they're going to put LeBron on our platform. That sounds like a much better business model than us trying to figure out how to like convince him, so I think part of it, so obviously that original approach just wasn't the right one. And, we made a pretty swift and really, really something that really altered our entire future to really move in that other direction. But I think that's the thing about any kind of failure or any kind of misaligned approach, is that the key is to recognize it and not be too wedded to whatever your original vision is, so that that you can kind of listen to what the world is telling you, what the market is telling you, what your customers are telling you, and really respond with even some very fundamental changes.
Jean-Baptiste?
Yeah, I can compliment on that. I mean, on our side, UEFA, I mean, it's another story, because as you know, we are very much risk adverse. So actually the whole point of the UEFA Innovation Hub is actually to allow this room for failure, and actually to try to embrace failing fast. I know it's a buzzword, but this is what we try to do. So on our side, I mean, we're still on the learning journey, but working with startups and with our ecosystems, we've now identified the key criteria in terms of driving value. And so the failure is that we've learned in the past in terms of engagement or different proof of concept and testing what kind of technology, what kind of infrastructure works for us in our own environment and which one does not. And so now we are way more equipped in terms of how we can actually engage with different startups, depending on their profiles, depending on on their value proposition and how it can fit in within our own ecosystem. But I would say the failure is more happening on a daily basis with the staff internally. So the way we're doing it is that through the innovation lab at UEFA, we have what we call a service offering, which is incubate a new idea. So here's like from ideation to pitch or to execution is like 3 to 4 months, and we really encourage our staff to pitch and to try and to test their ideas. And actually, what we see is like while they are defining a customer segment, while they are putting together a business model or prototyping solution, we can definitely see many failures, and that happens every day. It's just after a matter of quickly pivoting or quickly making the links with other business units internally to drive actually value. But that's part of the process. But I would say that being UEFA, we are quite risk adverse, and so we when engaging with outside startups was aware also to bring in some bit more failure potentially, and that's part of the framework we've been providing in the past 18 months, more or less.
Question that we've had from Nastia Laganova, and it's about the back to live sport process. Question for both of you. What would be your go-to ways to deliver a close to reality experience when games are back on but fans can't physically be present? Daniel, you're nodding like you may have a response.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think some of the strategies I've already seen deployed, like even sound effects or the people in the stands. I mean, it sounds a little cheesy, but I think it actually makes a difference. You need to do something to kind of capture the feeling. But I think when we think about it from our perspective, I think there has to be some way to kind of bring fans not only into the experience of watching, but in the experience of participating. So when you think about it, going to a game is a very participatory event. You're cheering, you're jumping up and down, and of course, every study shows that, there's a home team advantage in large part because of the energy of the crowd. So actually, you're actually in some way influencing the outcome. And it's a very participatory and interactive experience. And so when I think, when we think about games without fans, I think, one of the keys is not just to deliver a good experience on television or as good an experience as possible, considering that not having the usual energy of the crowd, but also like, how do you bring fans into the experience? So, I do think that content from fans during games that can be shared, either, integrated into broadcast or on complementary social channels, I think is critical, because I think that's something that, really adds to the experience when you look around and you see people, either your friend that you're high-fiving when something exciting happens in the game, or you're jumping up and screaming, or even like the strangers around you. That energy is important. So I think getting content from fans in their homes, not every fan obviously, but some key fans that then can be shared and reshared, I think that is a really critical part of the experience, and something that I think every league and team should be thinking about how to deliver.
Yeah, so we're looking at it. Obviously, I cannot disclose any information on that. For me, it's first we have to acknowledge that we need the fans, and like we have to respect them, because we see the value they are bringing to the overall product, which is football. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all trying, or people are looking at ways to replace them or to engage with them, but actually, fundamentally, we need them, and they are part of the football family, and that's a good thing as well that we've seen in the past weeks, is like this kind of understanding that we need the fans and that we truly want the fans. Now, in terms of solutions, obviously you're looking, when you're sponsors or with our podcast partners, in ways to be to try to vehicle this kind of new atmosphere or everything. But to be honest with you, with what we've tested or looking at, there is always technical issues in terms of delays, and also something which doesn't look real or doesn't feel like it's proper fans. So in terms of even overlays, and okay, we can look at many ways in terms of doing it, but I don't necessarily believe in terms of solution that will try to replace the fans, like where you can hear them from their couch. I mean, that can work, but technically speaking, we're still far from being able to execute like this. I mean, this will take quite some time, and maybe we should think or explore a bit more like creative ways in terms of how to do it. I don't want to go into what we are currently exploring, but it might not need or require a tool or people from the it could be something different where you try to engage with in a different ways, but it could be a bit more creative and not just looking at solutions where you can just bring the fan from their couch, because first it's very difficult, and also we have plenty of other parameters to take into account, like health, safety, like I was saying, for remote production. And so, yeah, definitely we'll try as much as we can to engage with the fans and to make them at the core of the experience and of the new go live, I would say. But you have to operate in a constraint where it's not that easy, and that you don't have as well all the solutions ready for it. So, and I think creativity would be good there, actually.
Another question coming in from Jim Gooley. Good to have you with us, Jim, from the Athens Women's Football Summit. Jim says, fans need to share the experience. Sharing is what makes the fan. What key component or content promotes sharing at the core?
Yeah, I think when you think about sharing, I think people like to share, content that feels more authentic and they feel like directly connected to. So, I mean, I think when you think about the kind of content that people are sharing right now, it's content that's really, getting behind the scenes, getting up close, and adding something to, just kind of the highlight, type experience. I think when you think about sharing also, it's important to think about the different platforms that people like to share content on, because each platform, we were just talking earlier about TikTok, each platform has its own voice, its own personality, not just the platform, but the platforms that people tend to use. Like, different people tend to use different platforms. There's less overlap in audience than you might expect between platforms. So I think it's important to have a strategy that really thinks about what is the personality of a platform, and then what is the kind of content that people are going to want to share and want to really promote and connect with their friends.
Not much to add here is like how, from UEFA perspective, is how we engage on the different platforms with our own brand, with our own vision, with our own identity, I would say, and how we make sure we can allow the fans to actually take part in this. I mean, this is why there is Greenfly, this is why we partner with them, this is why we are actively engaging in the different platforms, being Instagram or Facebook. I mean, we all have a strategy there, and actually it's allowing the fans to get as well more and more behind the scenes to make sure that they are part of the story and that they are part of the game. And so this is what we're working on with our partners, and actually the digital and social media team are doing a great job. I mean, we can see the engagement we have on our different platforms. We have the best numbers. So, I mean, we will even push, and like we were saying before, it's just a matter of acceleration in terms of allowing fans to actually be able to engage more and to actually share more. But it's also a way for influencers or players we're working with, or even like clubs or federations, to actually embrace new ways of engaging as well. So maybe it's a way also for the rights holders and for the sports organization to be up to speed on that and to actually leverage all the opportunities which are there. But clearly sharing will be key, especially when you have like no fans in stands for quite some time.
Jean-Baptiste, a question, this one for you, and it's from Michael Manning from Oracle. Thank you very much for the question, Michael. And it's about VR, Jean-Baptiste. He says the 2017 UEFA Champions League final was broadcast in VR via BT Sport. What are your UEFA's thoughts on VR as a channel in the years to come?
Well, this is clearly something we've been looking at, and I think in 2017 as well with Live Like, there was this VR opportunity. We did some tests. We actually worked again with Live Like as part of the UEFA Startup Challenge we've put together for UEFA TV. We are looking at VR, we are looking at AR. I think at the end of the day, as I was saying with the UEFA Innovation Hub, is not just one technology or one solution. It's how it allows you to put together a new product or to engage with new audiences. And so here it's more looking at what will be feasible in the months or years to come. And it's not necessarily just VR. I would say maybe it's more AR to a certain extent, but how different worlds can come together and how you are working as well with other industries. Just like it's funny to see how gaming, how fashion, how music, and some to a certain extent football is coming together in some kind of a digital space. And here it's more to look at the different trends from this standpoint rather than just VR. Obviously, we'll keep activating with VR and with AR when it makes sense and when we have like objectives in this domain. But I'm more looking at the bigger picture in terms of what the digital world can bring us and how people will engage in the future. Again, going back to behavior science, but also understanding what's lying ahead in terms of platforms and new actors coming in where we are all coming in to a certain extent together and what will be the future of our product. So I'm more looking at it from that angle, to be honest.
We've just got a couple of minutes left, gentlemen, and I wanted to ask Daniel a question just to round off. Incidentally, Tom from your Greenfly marketing team has posted what is, for my money, one of the most interesting white papers of its type, which is the 120 ways to engage with fans when there are no games. He's posted that in the discussion portal.
I actually have a question about that document, Daniel, because I loved it. How did you arrive on 120 ways?
I think our team when they were they didn't target a specific number, and maybe we tried to round it because 123 or 117 would have sounded a little odd, but it was really driven more by the ideas than any goal to hit a certain number. I think one of the things we did want to really communicate is that there are a lot of ways. It's not. We're in a very sophisticated environment right now in terms of the ability of people to create content, to work remotely, to collaborate in creative ways. There are many different channels to consume content, to engage, to interact, and so. I think we did want to capture a sense of plenty, even as we're all stranded in our homes, that there are so many opportunities. But I don't think we were targeting a very specific number.
Final question, Daniel, and it comes from Matthew Reynolds from the UK Department of International Trade, who's tuned in to watch us. Thank you for your question, Matthew. And he talks about that wealth of content, huge array of options available. Are you worried about fans being overloaded with content, and how is that playing into your thinking around this?
Jean-Baptise likes that one.
He's enjoying that question. We'll come to Daniel first, and maybe a final word from Jean-Baptise after.
I don't know. The short answer is no, though I think obviously, if you stuck all the content on one channel, it would be completely incoherent and overwhelming. I think the key is, just as there's an enormous growth in the kinds of content, the amount of content, there's also just a complementary enormous growth in the number of channels. People talk today about how every athlete is a brand, everybody's a media company on some sense. I think what we've tried to think about and do with our platform is think about, okay, how does an organization, whether it's UEFA, whether it's a club, whether it's a media company, how do they take advantage of all the channels of their community? Right, because it's not just their big channels, which are obviously extremely important, but it's how do we interact with, support, and get our sort of ambassadors in our community to support content on their channels. And so once you're able to do that, if you think about a club and you think about all the kinds of channels that people interact with that club, they're interacting with the club channels directly, but they're also interacting with all the channels of the athletes. They're interacting with fan club channels, with Facebook groups, there's just so many different channels that there's a sort of there are many different places for this content to go. And what's really awesome is that if you really hit that right, where you hit the right content on the right channel at the right time, you get just an explosive level of connection and engagement. And so the short answer is that that we're lucky. There's a lot of content, but there are a lot of channels, and it's not like one person is going to all those different channels. Each channel has its own audience and its own way of engaging, and so there's just not only a tremendous amount of content to share, but there are many different places to consume and interact with it.
Mm-hmm. Fully agree. I think I would say it's quality over quantity. So 2 keywords is strategy and preparation. I mean, you can have all the content, it's true, but at the end of the day, what you need is what Daniel said, is the right content at the right place at the right time. So you need to best prepare, you need to strategize everything, and you make sure you engage depending on the platforms with your different audiences, with your different communities. And then you will not have some kind of overwhelming, because it will be authentic, it will be right to the point, and so people will like it. So at the end of the day, it's how you best prepare and strategize everything to make sure you're on the right platform at the right time, and using the right influences as well. So
that's all we've got time for today. Jean-Baptise Alliot from UEFA. He's gone. Thank you both. Jean-Baptise, there they're back. I'm going to try and fist bump Jean-Baptise just there. There we go. And Daniel Kirschner, fist bump for you as well. Boom. Thank you very much indeed, gents.
The fist bump worked quite well, actually. We might roll that out tomorrow.
I think so, yeah.
Very good. Fascinating conversation. And thank you to Greenfly, our friends and partners, for that. We've reached the end of the solution session and the end of the live content from day 2 of Leaders Week Direct. We are back with Leaders Live Wednesday, 2 p.m. in the UK, 9 a.m. New York, 9 p.m. and prime time in Singapore and across Asia. And James?
And 6 a.m. in Los Angeles.
And 6 a.m. as you always say in Los Angeles. Thank you for being with us today. You can watch it all again very shortly on the platform. Keep networking, keep the conversation going, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a good night.